It's yes, we are being recorded. So we'll just sit here for a couple of minutes and see if we get some people to come in.
Perfect.
And this is always the awkward part I find on Zoom is you're just sitting here going, hello, how are you? Oh, someone's here, so that's lovely. We've got at least one person here. That's lovely. Got a couple.
Great.
So that's super good. So we're going to give it maybe, I'd say we'll give it a minute or two just to make sure that anyone else, hopefully that's coming in, will be here. And if not, we're going to be just the smartest people around. So it's okay.
Lots and lots of questions can be asked.
And, you know, I didn't even think to ask. We were busy talking about recycling and interesting things. So you'll have to do your own introduction because I didn't get anything from you.
No problem.
But do you want questions during the presentation or would you prefer at the end?
Well, why don't we put questions into the chat and then we can answer those at the end. And then if people want to open up their microphone and ask their own questions at the end, that would be fine too. And we can just kind of.
We're doing webinars, so so all you people attending, you are blocked, your microphones are blocked and your cameras are blocked. So yes, as Catherine has suggested, we'll just put things in the chat or the Q&A and we'll kind of both be monitoring that for you. So we'll give it one more minute and we will go ahead and get started. And I could move my camera and I'll show you my cat while we're waiting, but she's sitting here very politely. She's being very kind. So she's going to get all this too.
Should be the best recycling cat around.
Really well.
I did just put my email address into the chat in case anybody needs it.
And I'll go ahead and put mine in as well, just in case you lose one of us. Let me put me in too. I'm balanced very precariously on the edge of a cushion here, so I have to be really careful what I'm doing. Okay, so there I am as well. And let's go ahead and we'll start. And I'll just say that I'm Penny from Eisenhower. And we've already mentioned that you don't have your cameras or your mics, so please use chat. And this is Catherine Carney from Cook County, just Cook County
Department of Environment and Sustainability.
Environment. And thank you for coming. And we're all going to be really good recyclers now. So I'm turning it over to Catherine. And again, if you have questions, just drop them in chat or Q&A and we'll keep an eye on those. And Catherine, go for it.
All right. So I wanted to share my screen. So yes, I am Kate or Catherine Carney. I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator for Cook County's Department of Environment and Sustainability. We have a mission to foster healthy, resilient, thriving communities across the whole county. We want to improve the quality of life, protect our natural environment, and we really feel strongly about promoting sustainability and environmental justice for all of us, for every resident and for all the stakeholders here in the county. We do this through lots of ways. My main focus is to provide information, doing presentations and this sort of thing. And today we're going to focus on waste reduction and recycling rate. So today we are going to talk about how much waste we make, where it goes, how the 3 Rs can help us. I want to help to shine some light on what happens with our recycling, and then also give you a few resources to get more information later, things that you can go back to. So we're going to start with the big picture, waste around the world. So in, what year is this? 2018, I believe, this data shows that we generated over 2 billion tons of waste worldwide collectively. That's a lot of waste. And we've created a lot of waste that went to landfills that covered a variety of materials. So if you look at the waste composition, there's a large percentage of our waste that is food and green matter, a large percentage that's paper, another large percentage that is plastic. And so we're gonna narrow in on this a little bit and look at waste in the US. So in 2018, again, the US alone generated 292.4 million tons of waste. So we have a tiny percentage of the world population. We have a much larger percentage of the waste generated. And I think this is old news. A lot of people have heard that before, but there's some things that we can do to do better. Easy things that are going to make our lives better and healthier and not really create a lot of extra work for any of us. Now, this national waste, so the 292 million tons of waste, about half of it went to landfills. And of the waste that went to landfills, almost a quarter of it was paper. I like to really talk about that because paper is the most the biggest category of recycled materials in the country. It's also something that's really easy to get recycled because we have a lot of processes and manufacturers and paper mills in place that are using that material. So we could be recycling so much more of it, considering that almost 34 million tons of paper go into the landfills every single year here in the United States. But we're also putting a lot of metals, plastics, and glass, other things that could be recycled into our landfills for a variety of reasons. And let's also look a little bit closer to home. So here in Cook County, we also generate a lot of waste. According to our 2016 data, every single household generates about 8.2 pounds of waste per day. So some of our households are larger and some are smaller. So some of our households might make a little bit less, others make more, but 8.2 pounds of waste per household per day is a lot of trash. And we generate almost 2 pounds of recyclable materials per day. So we're talking a lot of trash coming out of our homes every single day. About 45% of landfill waste in Cook County, like our materials, could potentially be recyclable. So if we were putting it in the right place, we could make sure that it was getting turned into something new. So I've already mentioned this. When we put that trash in our trash cans, the garbage trucks can pick it up and they take it to landfills. So this is a landfill in Richmond, Virginia. This is a picture that I took. This landfill was massive. It was like a mountain and it was just garbage. This particular landfill is built right on the edge of a river. So they're building these very extravagant and highly engineered walls so that they can keep the trash in and they can continue to build higher and higher. So each landfill generally looks like this. They put the waste in a section at a time. So they just fill up, they call them cells. So they just fill up one cell at a time to a certain point. Each day they squish it down with big machines like you can see in this picture, and then they cover it. So this particular landfill covers it with soil and dirt. Other landfills use tarps and like fabric of other sorts. They do this for a few reasons. They want to keep the trash in, obviously, but they also want to discourage the friendly neighborhood birds and rodents from coming in and scavenging and distributing the waste. And then there's the potential that there could be materials in there that could cause diseases and illnesses in those animals. And so we don't want any of those things. So landfills are very highly regulated for these purposes. We take a more theoretical look at landfills. This is how they are engineered. So a lot of engineering and a lot of work goes into protecting the environment around the landfills. They're obligated to do this, and we want them to do this for our own best interest because we want to protect the groundwater beneath. We want to protect the surrounding soil. We want to protect the air. So this landfill is a pretty simplistic drawing of what a landfill looks like. It's got multiple layers of lining so that nothing can get out of the landfill, particularly liquids. That's why they use clay, because the water can't, or liquids can't get through clay once it's compacted. Then there's waste in there, and there's ways to collect some of the liquids in there and ways to collect the gases. Now, the reason that those two pieces are so important is there's two main byproducts of landfills, and those are a liquid and a gas. So the liquid is called leachate. It is when rain rains down on a landfill and filters through all the waste, or that inevitable half full water bottle that we've all put in the trash at some point in our lives, or if other kinds of cleaners and other liquids get put into the landfill, they filter through, they collect each other's chemicals and all the pollutants, and it just becomes like a disgusting pollution soup. You can't tell what's what, it's all mixed together. Oftentimes it's a really, really deep, dark brown, and we know that it's supposed to be water, but it's so contaminated that it turns a dark color. Every single landfill is obligated by regulation from the federal government that they have to collect that. They pre-treat it, so they get some of the pollutants out, and then it goes through the wastewater system to get fully cleaned before being released into the environment. Now, this is super important because for communities that depend on groundwater and well water for their drinking water, we really wouldn't want any of this to get into those water sources, because it would put our communities at risk. The other one is called methane. It is a gas. It's a major component of natural gas. So it's a part of the greenhouse gases. So that is particularly important for us not to let go into the atmosphere, because just like it's called, it's a greenhouse gas. So it works kind of like a greenhouse in our atmosphere. So the sun, the light and the heat can still get through the atmosphere, but the natural process is that the sunlight hits the earth and bounces off, and then the excess heat escapes through the atmosphere into space. But we have too much natural gas and methane in the atmosphere that blocks it. So the heat stays trapped in the atmosphere and can contribute to a lot of different climate change issues. Also, many years ago, we had a hole in our ozone layer, and these types of gases all work together to do really bad things for our environment and for the atmosphere. So we want to make sure that these byproducts, which are very toxic and harmful to the environment, we want to make sure that they are taken care of properly so that we can minimize the harm to us and to wildlife. So the 3 R's can make a really big difference for our communities and for the environment at large. So I want to talk to you about each of these 3 R's and ways that we can practically use those to make decisions about our everyday life so that we can reduce our waste. And our first one is to reduce. So reducing is making less trash, which is the obvious part, but we also want to try to use fewer natural resources, especially those finite natural resources that when they're gone, and we don't really want to contribute to that more than we really need to. So I love this graphic because it's a really easy visualization of a way that we can reduce. We have to go shopping. We have to eat, right? Like, even if we're just talking about grocery store bags, right? We have to eat. We don't all have a green thumb or even the space to be able to grow our own food. So we have to be able to shop. And if we are imagining that we go to the grocery store and end up with 2 plastic bags, we have to do that a couple of times a week because we have a large family, or we're cooking 3 meals a day. It adds up, right? So over the course of a month, that's a lot. And then eventually that adds up to over 200 bags each year. That is a lot of plastic bags to deal with. We have lots of problems arising from these plastic bags. Right here and just outside of my apartment, one is stuck in a tree, but it's so high up, I don't know how I could possibly get it down. So it's probably just going to be there for years. Maybe this winter when the leaves fall off, it'll come off, but we just have this plastic bag hanging in the tree and there's nothing I can do about it, short of nope, there's nothing I can do about it. I don't know how I can get it down. It's higher than the second floor balcony. So it's very high. Also, Nairobi in Kenya, they declared plastic bags to be their city's flower because there were so many plastic bags everywhere for many, many decades. And so they've done things to help eliminate some of those. But also, if we look at this data from the World Economic Forum, there's about 8 million tons of plastic leaked into the ocean each year. And by 2050, there's going to be more plastic in the ocean than there will be fish. And that's alarming. That's a lot of plastic. And we're talking about plastic that is microscopic and teeny tiny, but all the way up to giant pieces of plastic that can be seen from the sky, that it's so big. But that's a lot of plastic. And for many people, fish is economic well-being. That is a major source of food. And so we want to make sure that we can protect that resource to the best of our abilities. And by kicking our plastic bag habit, by replacing it with 1 or 2 reusable grocery bags, we can each have a really big impact on that. Also, food waste is a huge place that we can all reduce our waste at. Approximately 40% of all food in the United States is wasted, and that's from every scale. So that's from our individual homes up to grocery stores and restaurants and at the farm level. So it's at every level. Food is being wasted here in the US, and almost all of that, 97% of it, goes to landfills. So when it goes to landfill, it will break down and actually creates more methane than most of the other trash in the landfill. So that's contributing to another problem. So if we look at what the USDA is telling us, we could save an average of $370 per person each year if we reduced our food waste, if we do things like shopping specifically for our meals by making a list, or by making a plan for food for the week, making sure that when we buy in bulk, it's something that's not going to go bad, or something that our household can get through before it starts to spoil. And then also learning more about the date categories. So knowing the difference between a sell by and a use by date. So a lot of times those are different dates. They want it sold, but you can eat it a little bit after that sell by date. And we can find out more information about all those things on the USDA website. Additionally, for some of us, we have the option of composting. Some of us aren't interested in it at all. And so you're not going to set up a backyard compost. And some of us can't set up a backyard compost. Like I said, I live in an apartment, but there's some other options. There's food scrap pickup services that are available in some communities. You could make a compost bin, set up a compost bin in your backyard. And then there's this really cool vermicomposting, which is composting with worms. And they break the food down really, really fast and turn it into high quality compost way faster than doing a backyard compost. But maybe you don't have room for it, or maybe you just do not like the thought of having worms in your house. They're contained, but there's lots of options. And now we move on to reuse. So we want to try to reduce everything that we can. We want to reduce the amount of food we're wasting, reduce the amount of plastic bags that we are bringing into our homes, reducing packaging. Like sometimes I have to get produce that comes like on styrofoam with plastic wrap around it. And that's really not necessary because I'm going to clean the produce anyways. And so that's, if I can avoid doing that, that's another choice that I can make to reduce that waste, right? But then we've reduced, so now we want to move on to reuse. So we've reduced what we can, and what we can't reduce, hopefully we can reuse some of those things. And some of those things we can actually purchase initially for the point of reusing. We're back to those reusable grocery bags, right? Practical things like reusable water bottles. We're really lucky that more and more places around the city and the county have, in public spaces, have water refilling stations. So for a lot of us, it's a little bit easier for having that reusable water bottle at work and still staying hydrated. Also, I always love this picture of the reused milk jugs. This is like if I was a teacher, I probably would have this kind of stuff all over my classroom. But to me, it just is like the epitome of being organized and being beautiful. And it's not practical for most of our households, but finding other creative ways to reuse stuff is really important. I'm reusing some jars that had food in them, that I purchased from the grocery store for trying to keep my popcorn kernels fresh for longer, as opposed to in the plastic bag. And so there's a lot of ways that we can do that on a small scale, but also there's a lot of websites and stores that offer us the ability to purchase or sell or give away items that no longer have any life in our homes. Freecycle.org, OfferUp.com, Habitat for Humanity's Restores are all really great places for that. I've had great experiences personally with OfferUp. I bought a washing machine and dryer. They were great, and it was wonderful because they were somebody else's. They didn't need them anymore for whatever their reasons were. So I was able to continue the lifespan of that washer and dryer. ThredUp is another great one. It is an online thrift store for children's and women's clothing. I've also used that extensively. I've bought a lot of clothing from ThredUp, which is great because these items that I was able to purchase not only saved me money, but also you could hardly tell that they had been used. And so they were able to bulk up my wardrobe for different seasons. And it's a great resource. So there's other places like this that you can find. If you're a thrifter, you already know, but these are great ways to help keep some of these materials out of the landfill because they still have a lot of life in them. And then, so we've reduced, then we've reused what we can. And then finally, we're going to recycle the items that can be recycled out of what's left over. So I like to think of it as its own natural resource. We can take this trash, these things that have served their purpose for us, right? We don't need them anymore, but they can be then turned into something new as a natural resource. So we can extend the lifespan of those natural resources and those materials by recycling. We can recycle always paper, plastic, metal, and glass. We're talking pretty much any kind of paper. You can recycle your newspapers plus the shiny ads in them, which we didn't used to be able to recycle. We talked earlier about mail, the envelopes that have the little plastic window in them. Those are totally okay to recycle. Again, we didn't used to be able to recycle those. We're able to put all kinds of cardboard and paperboard, like cereal boxes, to those Amazon boxes that we all have more than we really need of. All kinds of paper can go into our recycling bin. And in a lot of municipalities, they're also accepting cartons. So cartons are those juice and milk cartons. They feel like they have like a waxy layer on the outside. That's actually a layer of plastic, and they have another layer of plastic on the inside. But between those two layers, it's some of the highest quality paper we have on the planet. And so we want to make sure that when it's available to us, that we're recycling those. They can be recycled whole. Put the cap back on if you give them a quick rinse, and there's a mechanism specifically for being able to recycle those. The Carton Council here in the US has really pushed forward a lot of the recyclability of those items, and there are ways that they're recycled. So it's another valuable resource. Glass is only glass bottles and jars that you bought from the grocery store or from a store with something to eat or drink in them. I want to make sure that we have that distinction because the glass is treated differently between a pickle jar compared to a window pane. They have different kinds of tempering and that sort of thing. So that window pane can technically be recycled, but we have to take it somewhere special. So just bottles and jars, basically from our kitchens, could be recycled. Give them a rinse. Metal, so that's only steel or tin and aluminum cans. Please give them a rinse. The steel cans, that part that you cut out to open, can actually put that right back in the can and the whole thing can go into the recycling bin. We also don't have to take the labels off of those anymore. If it's something you like to do, go for it. But again, there are advances in recycling that have allowed the process to deal with those. And then there's plastic. So not all plastics are created equal. If you use the rule of thumb that plastics from your kitchen, bathroom, laundry room predominantly can be recycled if they're completely empty, water bottles, soda bottles, ketchup bottles, milk jugs, laundry soap bottles, those type of bottles can all get recycled. The yogurt, little yogurt cups, those are accepted in some places, but not in others. So I would check on those. But anything that has a neck to it, so water bottles, milk jugs, those type of things, those can all be, those are very widely recyclable and can be recycled. I recommend putting the cap back on them because the whole thing then can get recycled. If the caps go in separately, the caps probably won't get recycled because they'll fall through the cracks, unfortunately. So put the cap back on. Don't squish them because the machine, some of the automation can't tell what it is then. So put them in whole, put the cap back on, and a lot of our plastics can be recycled that way. But there are a few things that I want to caution you that we never put into our recycling bins. These things always have to go to the landfill unless there is a separate special recycling program for them. So styrofoam, there are a few communities in Cook County, maybe only one or two, that are taking styrofoam in a special drop-off location. I know that Whole Foods used to take styrofoam. I'm not sure if they're doing that in light of COVID, but check with the stores. This material is technically recyclable, but there's not a lot of companies that are turning them into new things. So if you do encounter a recycling program for styrofoam, it's because they have a direct connection right to a company that's going to turn them into new stuff. So styrofoam needs to go into a special recycling program or to the landfill, so into your trash can. Plastic bags are actually super, super recyclable, but only in the special programs like taking them back to the store. If we put them into our recycling bin, they can actually ruin the machinery that happens, that we're going to talk about in a minute. So we want to make sure that we don't put our recyclables in a plastic bag when we put them into our bins. We don't put any bags in there. Obviously, reduce them where we can. Then reuse them. Like I reuse some in my little bathroom trash can, right? It's the perfect size. And then the rest of them that you're not able to reduce or reuse, take to a store. Almost every single grocery store, and even like Kohl's department store, sometimes like Home Depots and those types of stores, they have special bins. You put them right in and they're connected to a company that's going to take them and turn it into something new. So they're definitely going to get recycled if you put them in that way. Otherwise, they have to go to the landfill. Food contaminated items. So that's like if you finish off that bottle of ketchup, give it a rinse before you put it in there because the residual ketchup is going to cause contamination, but especially with pizza boxes. So I like to think of cardboard or pizza boxes, really anything that's like a paper and could have food contamination. My question I always ask myself is, can I possibly wash the grease out of this cardboard without ruining the cardboard? Most likely not, right? Because paper is fragile under certain circumstances, especially when wet. So if I can't do it, then the paper mill won't be able to do it either. So that has to go to the landfill. It could cause a lot of contamination to a whole batch of recycled paper if they had that in there. So we want to make sure that the greasy ones we're putting in the trash, and then our unsoiled cardboard we're putting into our recycling bin. Shredded paper, that's another one that's very highly recyclable, but because of its size, it can fall through the cracks, just like I was saying with the plastic caps. So if you are going to shred at home, because we definitely want you protecting your confidential documents. So if you choose to shred at home, please find someone that can take it for composting, or some animal shelters will take it for bedding for the animals. Find another use for it, or take part in a community shred event. That's really the best bet. They bring special trucks to the events. They put your documents right into it. It shreds it directly into the truck, and that truck goes directly to a special paper mill recycling plant. So you know that your documents are destroyed, so your confidentiality is protected, but you also can be sure that they're going to get that paper is going to contribute to new paper. So we definitely want to participate in as many of those shred events as we can when we have those documents, or see if we can't find another outlet for that shredded paper. If you unfortunately can't find those other outlets, shredded paper has to go into the trash. Clothing, again, textiles, clothing and towels and that sort of thing, it is technically recyclable, but only in a special program. So if your clothing is in good shape and you can donate it or sell it, like through FreeCycle or OfferUp, or you could send it into ThredUp. That's another place you could get rid of that clothing if it's in good shape. Otherwise, find a special textile recycling program, or it has to go to the landfill, unfortunately. And then we have tanglers, and this is just kind of a catch-all. This is extension cords and hoses and ropes, and you can see metal hangers on here, and those plastic bags actually can turn into tanglers. So these are items that may or may not be technically recyclable, but because of their shape and their size and their flexibility, they can get caught in the machines and they can actually cause a lot of damage. They can break machines, they cause the need for shutting all the equipment down so that they can cut everything out of it and dispose of it. And it's going to end up at the landfill anyway. So it's better to just reuse where you can, give it away if it's still usable, or it has to go to the landfill. All right, so our recycling, we go through all this effort to make sure we're putting the right things into our blue bins or our recycling containers. And then what happens to it, right? So it goes to a place called a material recovery facility. It's called a MRF. That's my favorite way to say it, because I just think MRF sounds funny. So at the MRF, they collect everybody's recycling, from your whole neighborhood, from your entire community maybe, and it all goes to this first picture, which is called a tip floor. So they just dump it all into this gigantic pile, and they use big machinery and conveyor belts to start the sorting process. Some of the sorting is done with machines, like infrared scanners that can tell the difference between different kinds of plastics, or magnets for the steel cans, or fans to blow the newspaper and the lightest of paper away from the heavier papers. And then it goes through multiple stages of the sorting, which you can see in the middle picture. So some machines are used, but there's still a lot of human energy that's used to do the sorting. So all of these people are checking for contaminants. So plastic water bottle ending up accidentally in with the paper, they're pulling that out. They're making sure that they only have one type of paper. So maybe it's paperboard, like cereal boxes, or maybe it's newspapers. And so the different types of paper get sorted out. Same thing with the plastics, same thing with the different kinds of metals, the aluminum and the steel. And then the final picture is it going into the baler. So each of these materials is sorted into its type and put in a little storage area. And then it goes through this other conveyor belt and into the baler, which is like my favorite movie, WALL-E, the robot that collects all the trash in his belly and squishes it into a cube. It's just like that, except on a really big scale. So you can see stacks of the bales in the background of that picture. So the baler bales all the same material together, and each one of those bales weighs 500 to 1,000 pounds of a single material, or as best as they were able to sort it into a single material. And then from there, they then get shipped to a manufacturer that's going to process it or turn it into something new. So at the MRF, which is the next stop in the process, they're just sorting it. But if we put things into our recycling bins that don't belong in there, from the MRF, they end up still going to the landfill. They pull those things out. If you have your recyclables bagged, there's a possibility that that bag will never get opened because they just don't know what's inside of it. And when there's this many people that are working there, they have to do what's safest. And so a lot of that stuff just goes straight to the landfill, which is kind of a long detour for going to the landfill. And we would be better off just putting the right things in and sending the things that have to go to the landfill. I know that I'm guilty of it. A lot of people really just really want these items to be recyclable. They can think of all these things that like, oh, this could be turned into, but we live in a capitalist society, right? So if there's not a market for it, if the MRF can't sell these materials, then it's not going to get recycled. It's going to end up at the landfill. So just want to remind us all that the paper, plastic, metal, and glass, making sure it's mostly things from our kitchens, right? Cereal boxes, pasta boxes, water bottles, that sort of thing. Those are the things that can go into our recycling bins that end up at the MRF. So we also have some additional resources that might be helpful. We have our Green Guide library, which is on our website. It has these recycling guidelines. It has information about other types of waste, how we can reduce it, and the safest and correct ways, the proper ways to dispose of those things like sharps and e-waste, like old computer monitors and that sort of thing. So that information is available at our Green Guide library. Also, because we are still masking in a lot of places, it's pretty important that we're doing that. So just a friendly reminder that those PPEs, the gloves and masks, they're not recyclable unless it's specifically a recycling program for those items. So they have to go into the trash. And then if you have electronic waste you need to get rid of, just give the recycling center a call beforehand to make sure that when you go, they're available for you. Additionally, we have this pledge to conserve Cook County. This is something that we've been working on for a while, and it's easy ways that easy actions that we can take to help curb our emissions. And if you go to cookcountyil.gov, conserve cook /conserve cook, you can find the pledge and take the pledge and learn about the different ways that we can make these small changes, but also the benefits of making those small changes, like changing to an LED light bulb, is really to our own benefits because the bulbs last forever. And yeah, so for specific stuff, please check with your municipality, but I definitely want to hear any questions that we might have.
We did get one while you were talking about what you can recycle, and that is, can you recycle receipts? Because I know there's been a lot of chat about that.
Yeah, unfortunately, receipts, because it's usually that heat paper, you have to put that in the trash, unfortunately.
Yeah, okay. I had one and I think I forgot what it was. So here and see if anything else comes in as a question. Plant containers and cells.
So that depends on your recycling hauler. So the company that picks up your recycling, they are not recyclable with most recyclers, but there are places that want them, like nurseries will take them back because they'll reuse them, or sometimes, you know, you're like I'm trying to think. Like open lands might know of places that want them. They deal mostly with trees, but they might know of some connections. Also, if you go to the farmers market and you are purchasing plants and that sort of thing, ask around the farmers market. They might also want to take them to repurpose them and reuse them.
That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
I know I had a question. I didn't know that you could recycle lids. And I did not know you could recycle caps. I always throw them away. So, okay, so that's good to know.
Well, that's something that's changed in recent years. So, you know, all this stuff changes over time with new technologies and with, you know, new methods of sorting and collecting. And so that is kind of an evolution, just like how before we had to take the labels off of our steel cans. We don't have to do that anymore unless we want to, because technology has evolved enough and created new methods of taking care of those things. So it's a little bit easier for us.
There's one in the chat here. It's a long one. Any advice for getting my workplace on board with recycling? We are a public garden, but we don't have any internal recycling. It isn't something we promote. We have a small staff and I'm new, but it is currently not important to individual staff or the organization at large. And I would like to say too, that that's one thing that we've noticed at the library, that even though we put things in recyclable containers, we're not always sure that the people who are doing the cleaning and things pick them up and put them into the right bins outside.
Yes. So I have two different things to say about that. So I actually, this is a second career for me. I went back to school and got my conservation and environmental science degree after I'd already had, a career through most of my 20s in construction and fire sprinkler design. And I worked for a contractor that didn't recycle. One person put out a collection bin for the soda can, for the aluminum cans, and he just took them home and sold them to scrap metal. So that was getting recycled because it was convenient for everybody to put those in there. But we were throwing away so much paper, and those big rolls of architectural plans, and it just broke my heart every time I was putting those into the dumpster. So I personally found a company, mind you, this was 15 years ago. So I found a company that would provide a dumpster for paper. They would pay they paid the contractor for the paper, and they removed it for free. So it was, a net win. So we just had to make room for the second dumpster in the yard, and all our paper went in there. And then it ended up actually making the contractor a little bit of money. It wasn't substantial. So everybody got on board once I figured this out and talked to the owner, and he gave his okay. Everybody was really quick to get on board when they didn't have to do that legwork, and it was just ready for them. So that's one piece of it. I think that if we can help people to feel like, we're not dumping extra stuff on them to just make that small change, you can get a lot more people on board. But then also we need to get everybody on board, because I've worked with a lot of schools that were trying to get a comprehensive recycling program going in their school. And they had the same complaints. Actually, when I was in school for conservation and environmental science, that was a general concern and complaint about the housekeeping staff at my university. Turns out they weren't actually doing that. They had two bags, and they were actually recycling the things they were supposed to be recycling. But unless you have total buy-in, so the people that are in charge of that, you have to communicate with them and work with them to make sure that, again, we're not putting a lot of extra work on that person. So, a lot of time they're crunched for time. They have a lot of area to cover. And so there's a few ways to do that, maybe having a central paper recycling, and one person, maybe you just kind of take charge of that until people really get used to it. Or, maybe this is a perfect opportunity to get a summer intern from high school or university that will come and work with you and help make this happen. And once we create some habits, then a lot more people are usually on board, because it's just what they're used to doing, right? We're used to recycling at home because that's just the way it's been, right? And so unfortunately, there's not just one thing to do. Unfortunately, it varies based on size. I mean, with a small staff, that could potentially be much easier to get everybody on board if you come with the idea and, with a plan of action. But you have to just make sure that everybody's on board with it, or at least, the top people can give the okay, and the people that are going to be in charge of putting it in the right place can do that. I know another obstacle for a lot of organizations is the cost of it, because you do have to contract separately for that recycling pickup. And so making sure that your waste hauler can provide that service in the first place, and that they can do it in a way that isn't going to really negatively impact the budget of the organization is another piece of it.
And would you suggest calling, since we're in the village, would you call the village to find out if there are exceptions to what they could pick up, like you were saying, the clamshells or whatever? Or would it be better to try to contact the hauler directly if you can figure out who that is? Or what?
I'm a big proponent of checking the village's website first, because some villages, they have all that information there. Some villages and cities have it right there for you, clear as day. They're going to say, these are all the things you can put in. And others are going to say, we contract through Waste Management or GROOT or whoever it is, call them directly and they'll put a phone number in there for you. So I think that starting with the website for your municipality is a perfect first step. If you're a public garden, check with the municipality, because they might be able to just provide you with a recycling cart. If that's a part of the program in the village, that might be something that you can jump on board with the village or with the municipality that you're in. And what's the worst that's going to happen? You call them and they say, no, we can't help you. And you're in no worse position than you are, but at least you have an answer.
Okay, is there anything else that you want to ask? Okay, I'm going to throw one more out because this is one I keep hearing too, is that when you get packages, and I always cut the cardboard, and smash it and do all that stuff, but there's still always tape on it and there's always labeling on it. Do you have to take those off or does it matter?
You don't have to. You can leave that on. It's like the labels on our steel cans, right? So you can, a lot of people choose to take the labels off for privacy reasons. That's obviously a personal choice. If sometimes the tape just kind of all comes off when I open it, and so I do throw that in the trash. But no, you don't technically have to take that off. It sounds like it's been a bit of a debate in your house.
It has. Here's another debate. Sorry. Anybody else want to throw something out? Feel the peanuts that you get, the little peanuts that they say are biodegradable, those cannot be recycled. Am I correct?
No,
Right.
There's a difference between recycling and biodegradable. So if you are a composter and you have those biodegradable ones, you could put some of those in your compost and they would break down. If you have a composting program that you can be a part of, there's a possibility that those could be put into that if they're biodegradable. But that does not mean recyclable, unfortunately. So I know that a lot of companies have the biodegradable, compostable, plastic cups. They're made from plant plastics. Those are great, but really only if they're going to an industrial composting facility. Otherwise, they can't be recycled because they're not made out of a traditional petroleum resin. So there's other, we need to think about all those pieces. But I do know I've done this program with lots of libraries now, and a couple of times people have told me that if you get those, especially the styrofoam ones, but the packing, sometimes if you have a UPS store that's an individual store, not a part of the corporate, they'll actually take those and reuse them for future packaging. So that's a fun thing that you can check out if you have a neighborhood UPS store or something like that. The plastic bulb, the air ones that are those of you, the bigger ones, yeah. If you pop those can actually go in with your plastic bag recycling. Just let the air out.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. So that's really interesting too. Wow. Yeah. Anything else, people? We have a couple of minutes left. If there's something else anyone would like to ask. This will be on the library Facebook page. You should be able to watch the recording later if you need to, if you want to, refresh your mind on something. If there's any questions on it, you can call me at the library. I'm Penny, or let's put our emails in one more time.
Absolutely.
Just in case anybody wants to contact either of us. I know sometimes people ask if they can have your slides.
I can send you PDF, and I can also send you the recycling guidelines that you can share with everybody.
Great. So if you people want that, let me know, and I'll put mine in one more time. And I saw something else in the.
Oh, that's really interesting. Thank you for that tidbit, that you can email Amazon to request that you don't get plastic packaging, that they use cardboard instead,
Oh,
which
that-
is, you're still getting the packaging, but cardboard is a little bit more recyclable. So that's really smart.
That's good to know. It's really good to know. So I'm going to go ahead and save the chat too. And I don't know where that shows up, but I'm going to save it at least. And hopefully you would be able to access that if you need to. But if you would like to get the slides, let me know. And I will get those out within the next few days. And is there one last call for anything? Anybody? Mm,
I hope it's
I have
just
to-
because
I
I
have to
explained everything so well.
Yes. Yes, this was great. This was really, really, really informative, really good. And now, Catherine, are you coming back?
I am
For-
in October for energy efficiency. And I think I'm going to have a prize. So everybody should come back and join us for that. And
All right, you guys, you heard that.
we'll do a raffle for something awesome. I haven't decided yet, but it'll be energy efficiency related.
A lot of fun. So we'll look forward to that. Okay, great. Thank you so much. That was a pleasure and it was lovely to meet you, and we'll see you in October.
Yes, thank you
And
so
I'm
much.
going to go ahead and I will end. And again, remember, this will be up on the Facebook page within a day or so. So under
Perfect.
videos. Okay, thanks, Catherine.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye.